the best I understand and know at this point in time. And I always work in that way. And the hidden codes are always revealing themselves. So hopefully, as we go through this call, video and webinar together, we'll discover something, and also the universe will move on and we'll start to sense it. So I suppose I could summarize my background. I first came across spiral dynamics in '97. My career as an engineer in oil, gas and water, largely the privatization of the water industry in the UK, was really my learning ground to help me understand my curiosity about how people tick. And so I became a troubleshooter. I became known because I could get things done and everybody enjoyed it, but actually we didn't spend money while we were resolving those issues. So I had great fun. And today I work internationally across all sectors. Agriculture has become a big part of what I'm involved with because fundamentally all wealth on the planet is derived from healthy soils, and that's how we view it. And most importantly, what I'm communicating in this slide is that I'm just like you. I'm a dad, I'm a granddad, I'm a curious human being, and I've really enjoyed my career thus far, and I'm preparing for the next at least 30 years of very active activity on the planet. And the message I want to bring right at the start is that over the last couple of weeks, as I really reflect and prepare for this autumn's speaking engagement, it's really the essence of everything we're doing is in the experience we have through application. So what I bring to you this evening in this talk is the essence of what I've taken out of over 30 years of active engagement with what later became known as spiral dynamics. So life started before spiral dynamics. And obviously many of you are here because some of you are considering the various programs that have been run in Dubai, Stance Matters and the executive program. And towards the bottom of the screen there, I'd like you to just grab these three words. The essence is in the experience, but through the experience, one learns the nuance, the finesse, and the fulfillment of the application of any point of view. And specifically, this evening, I'm going to talk about spiral dynamics integral, and all the lineage that goes with that. Also, that I'm working with you this evening, I'm actually consciously thinking through how best to provide you with the experience based on the first principles of application. So that will become clear as I go into my presentation. And I want you to also be aware that I'm always scanning for who's out there getting the first sense of the way the world will be and how the life conditions are changing around us that will affect all of us. And I've been very impressed by the work of Tony Seba and James Arbib in their work on rethinking humanity. You'll be able to obtain that from their website. But this quote, I think, really just set the context for our call today. We're on the cusp of the fastest, deepest, and most consequential transformation of human civilization in history. A transformation every bit as significant as the move from foraging to cities and agriculture 10,000 years ago. Now, I don't underestimate the significance of their words, because they're really talking about 5 technologies that are coming together in a convergence at this point in time. Artificial intelligence and robotics, new materials, new forms of energy, new forms of food production, and new forms of transport and mobility. And their key message, which is really the reason we're on this call together, is that all these technologies are coming together and we're not yet ready for this as a human species. We have to learn very quickly how to discern what to apply where, when, and why, with what consequences, because perhaps it's the first time we've had to choose what the future quality of life is we desire ever in the experience of our species. Now, what I'm saying also is that by the time we arrive here, you're here in response to some innate intelligence within you that's creating a curiosity, that's giving you a yearning to discover how to improve at what you do. And I don't know the scope of your inquiry, but what I do know is you're here because you're looking for something. So my simple maxim from the early 80s is that by the time you come to join a call like this, the change has already happened within you and you are just learning to grow into it. So today, this conversation on spiral dynamics is about accelerating this becoming fully human, Genuine human is the phraseology that's emerging on the fringes at the moment. But it doesn't mean to say that it's an easy transition, because all significant paradigm transitions historically have been a bit messy. But our job also, and it's certainly been my premise for the last 20 years, is that our job is to make the transition as graceful and as easy as possible, because now we start to appreciate the underlying dynamics. So we're trying to fix the unintended consequences of our previous solutions. And what we know from Einstein and others is that if we try and fix the problems with the same thinking that created the problems in the first place, we just go around in circles. So be cautious when you hear language of circular economy, because there is a circularity, and I'll hint at that as I go through my talk today. But it'll be something we go into in much more detail on the trainings. We're also in that age when we're learning how to handle wicked problems. Now, what does a wicked problem mean? It means that these are problems for which there's no clear solution. If you scan the news, that the topic that really engaged me almost 15 years ago was the conversation about beehive collapse. That's when conventional scientists were saying this is way beyond our capacity of our current science, of our conventional science, to understand what's going on here. When you're analysing the contents of a beehive, the honey, then there's over 70 different chemicals and a whole range of other microbiological activities going on. It's not easy to work out what the root cause is. So wicked problems are those that have no clear solutions. What we do know is that we're surrounded by wicked problems: drought, economic instability, cultural change, mass migrations of peoples, and so on and so forth. These are all issues that are wicked problems for which the root cause is most easily accessible through what I'm going to talk about today. And last but not least, and I've hinted that in the last point, we are in the paradigm change. And I want you just to remember that when I'm using words, I'm using as best I can and very specifically and in line with their true definition. Equally, I'm aware that a lot of the words we will use as we work together will need redefining, because we need to have a common understanding before we can navigate into any stage of discernment that's meaningful. So Thomas Kuhn in his book, his book, The Structure of Scientific Revolutions, really defined paradigm as the dominant concepts and truth-seeking practices of a culture. That's all changing. We're moving beyond the conventional to a post-conventional, a more holistic, early stage holistic, and into an integral form of science. And it's in that integral scientific space that I'm speaking from this evening, because that was the consequence and conclusion of some of the very early research that started in the 1950s that later became known as spiral dynamics in 1996. I also want to bring out that as a species, we are remarkable. We are remarkable. And there's always a way forward. And much of the science I'm working with today tells us there's a way forward if only we could learn to get out of our own way. And Dee Hock, who invented very significant social systems, for example, he created the Visa card, but not in the form that it's managed today. Very, very subtle differences in the organizational design. And it was designed to keep energy flowing. It wasn't designed, as it is today, to maximize profit. And he wrote back in, this was 1996, I think. We are at that very point in time when a 400-year-old age is dying and another is struggling to be born. A shifting of culture, science, society, and institutions enormously greater than the world has ever experienced. Now, absorb those words, but also be aware that the transition we're in, a paradigm transition, is not fixed in 18 months or 2 years. Our conversation today is equipping us to start the process and accelerate and refine this journey, which is probably the next 200 years if we're lucky. So we have to be realistic when we're working in this domain. Now, Howard Bloom, a very significant author, very significant scientist, well known for his very practical work in society as well outside his domain as a cosmologist, he summarizes this in The Genius of the Beast. The problem does not lie in the turbines of the Western way of life. It does not lie in industrialism, capitalism, pluralism, free speech, or democracy. Okay. So we can hear lots of people blaming these aspects of our social institutions. Howard says, the problem lies in the lens through which we see. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is where I want to start with the core of what I'm going to talk about this evening. There are three themes that I'm going to work with, three topics. How spiral dynamics reveals the hidden code of human and cultural change, and I want to look at it from an integral perspective. Now, whilst I'm talking, I would just want you all just to type into chat either yes or no to the question. Have you read the book Spiral Dynamics? If you've read the book Spiral Dynamics, cover to cover, type in yes. If you've not, type in no, and that'll help me discern some of the scope of what I say. The second point is that I will look at our work with Anastasia and yourselves and focus on the key leadership skill for navigating complexity, how this framework of spiral dynamics integral, and the whole lineage really does equip us to support and thrive through this paradigm change. And then towards the back end, I shall focus on some real examples of applying. And that's where I start to run into a challenge, and I'll explain that when I get there. But I'm trying to cover the full scope of your interests on the call. So at some stage, I'll be asking you another question to type another response into chat to help me with that. Okay. So without further ado, spiral dynamic, how it reveals the hidden code of human change. We live in an amazing universe, and I don't know if any of you are tracking the consternation or conversation. It is consternation about the new objects that are coming into our solar system, our universe from outside this universe. And I think it's 3i Atlas or I3 Atlas, this big object that's still creating some debate. It's going behind the sun at the moment, and within 90 days, we'll have a whole new understanding of what's going on in this place. But for those of you who are working in any of the contexts we're interested in this evening, leadership, management, be it coaching, or just generally interested as a psychiatrist in terms of the nature of humanness, Gregory Basin really summarizes what we're looking for. We're looking for the pattern, capital P. The pattern that connects is the pattern of patterns. Now you can see there, tucked away in this little object on the screen, which has a much bigger story to it. And one day I'll do a special presentation on that in the stars here. But basically, spiral dynamics fits into a master pattern, but it is also a master patterning of a pattern that fits into this species, Homo sapiens sapiens. So it's a cascade of patterns, capital P, all the way through, that fits into a master patterning that is actually talked about in the book Spiral Dynamics. Spirals exist from the subatomic to the interstellar realms as a dominant universal fractal. So we're seeing common patterns in the way life works. Deep within the cell nucleus are the long, spirally wound ribbons of DNA on which rests life's genetic code. On the other extreme, distant spiral galaxies send us greetings from the past. So here we discover that the spiral dynamics, the book was written as best it could be from a more integral perspective. And it sets the context and also the stance that I believe we need to be aware of when we're working with it, or when you're listening to conversation. I want you to be looking back in from as broad a perspective as you can bring to the conversation. We tend to get focused on human doing and lose sight of human thinking, and lose sight of the fact that human thinking and humanness is a pattern left behind as the universe evolves and develops in a multiverse. Let's go on. It's all in the book Spiral Dynamics. Life's spiral is expansive, open-ended, continuous, and dynamic. All of the worlds are alive at once. Yet, there is also an inner intelligence that draws them together in a hierarchical structure, the curvatures of life. So the simplest answer to my first question in terms of what leads to the core of this work is this inner intelligence of how life works that leaves behind these patterns that we're going to explore a bit more. And it has been popularized more through spiral dynamics. But spiral dynamics really is about the inner intelligence that leaves behind those patterns and the shaping dynamic between ourselves and our existence in the universe, our existence in the solar system, our existence on this planet and our coexistence with all life forms, especially human life forms, on this planet. Now, this I euphemistically call the cosmic tick. So, well before coming in contact with spiral dynamics, I was working with inquiries into cosmology, Arthur Young and his reflexive universe, for example, where you had leading mathematicians, leading scientists wanting to understand the dynamics of life on Earth. And whilst it just looks like a Nike tick, it's not. It's an unfolding of the most complex form of known in the universe, which is like a donut. It's called a torus, and this is a toroidal flow showing the emergence and the successional dynamics from the original singularity about 14 billion years ago, and shows how different life forms emerged. So if you want to map in nuclear physics, through to the chemistry, through to the molecular biology, and so on and so forth. Here you've got a lineage that shows the patterns that led to all the scientific endeavours that are on our bookshelves in any library. But it's this domain of humanness here. Humanness, Homo sapiens sapiens, stands on the patterning. It's one of the latest emergences over the last 13.8 billion years. And what we're looking at in our conversation today is the patterns of consciousness, the patterns of the psychological capabilities that have emerged in our species over the last 120,000 years. So here we have language that you just need to define. Here we have the successional dynamics of the universe. And that principle, that successional dynamic, one life form interacting with others, may lead to a leap where a new life form emerges with completely new characteristics, but it transcends and includes all that's gone before. This is an image of succession, or transcending and including all that's gone before. And the patterns of psychology that we're going to talk about are premised on exactly the same patterning. The universe always has an underlying recursive pattern that we can build upon. Now, because you're human and because you were shaped in this way, as one of my mentor water scientists back in 1893 told me, he said, Kristopher, remember that if you want to understand this reed bed, he was talking about a water treatment process using plants in soil, that's all it was. And he was treating effluent from the most complex chemical works in Europe, and the waste went in one end of the reed bed and came out as drinking water quality from the other. And he said, remember that the human being is the most sensitive instrument in the universe. And that's kept me busy since 1993, working out and understanding the nuances of that. But just reflect on the fact that as you sit here on this conversation, within you are patterns of everything that's ever been created in this universe over the last 14 billion years, because effectively that led to the biological form of you and the psychological form of you. So it makes my teaching easier in that very often the answers lie within if only we could learn to access them. And one day I'll do a presentation. I did this once before in Australia where I threw away my slides and just used this cover from this New Scientist magazine. So we've got the grand scheme of things. It's taken 14 billion years for the universe to create a species that's having this conversation this evening. But biological life that completely turned things around on this planet and led to the blue-green planet we enjoy, let's call it life. 2.8 billion years, a significant change, unique in the unique universe. And this evening, our conversation is about bringing in the predictive capabilities of this work. And see here, even new scientists, they know that when you're working with life and the patterns of life, you always have a predictive capability because you're working with the premise that life in itself is geared up to succeed, to transcend and include, if only that capacity can be created in the life conditions in which the life form emerged and is existing. So here you've got the predictive capability. Here we start to think about leading indicators for change, not just lagging indicators for change, which are the common indicators that tend to be used in society from policy setting right the way through to conventional science. We don't have time to research our way into this. What we do have is enough knowledge to be able to work with the principles and the postulates of how life works. And it doesn't matter the context. and we'll talk about it later. I've applied this in every sector imaginable. There is not a sector where this work here on this conversation cannot be applied. Why? Because we're dealing with the dynamics of humanness, of our species, which translates right the way through to all of our collective activities. So we're dealing with individual and the psychology of the mass mind, but we're also dealing with the psychology of a species. Let's call it humankind. Let's bring the new language into the conversation. So the research that led us here, impeccable research, and I've investigated this. I've visited the original sites. I've gone through all the original materials, visited Professor Graves' archives in the library in Union College in Schenectady. This was impeccable research. And I want you to focus on the image in the center that shows this nested hierarchy of consciousness. Because when we come to talk about the colors, basically the colors are communicating the higher orders of consciousness, different altitudes of thinking capacities that enable us to handle different levels of complexity. And this is the original image. Briefly, what I'm proposing, said Professor Graves in his announcement in 1978, briefly, what I'm proposing is that the psychology of the mature human being is an unfolding, emerging, oscillating, spiraling process marked by progressive subordination of older, lower-order behavior systems to newer, higher-order systems as man's existential problems change. So in that sentence, now you can start to unpick what I've been doing with you for the first 15 minutes of this conversation. We've been working with an understanding of the life condition and how this successional dynamic, as some of us upstretch towards what's possible, some of us hunker down and say, well, damn it, I already know how to do this. Or others hunker down even further and go, oh, I feel stuck and in a rut. My conversation covers, and our training covers the full spectrum of those states. But why? Because sometimes it's helpful to have someone who has complete disbelief in what you're dealing with, because it's a beautiful sight to hear them get to a point very early on in the training when they go, it was like having a veil lifted from my eyes. Or the other common one that I've experienced since 1970, since 1987, 88, was, thank God I'm not going crazy. So for whatever reason on the call, be comforted that you're not going crazy, but also you're starting to work with the leading edge understanding of humanness, how humankind at an individual or collective basis evolves and develops. And we're understanding what is truly the holistic meshing between the life form and its life conditions. And in my call today, I've expanded the awareness because we're exposed to gross, very dense physical interactions, very subtle, emotional perhaps interactions, but also causal. We sit and float through a universe that's shaping our cult psychology as well. So these life conditions, I'll just get this little piece of Zoom junk that's appeared on my screen. So life conditions outside interact with latent capacities inside the being, which awakens the coping systems. So we have within us coping systems, orienting intelligences, complex adaptive intelligences. The terminology has to be flexible because we're on the leading edge of understanding this. But coping systems was the words that Grave used. And we realize that changes in the world may cause the person to think differently or not, or that changes in thinking of the individual and the collective may lead the person to change the world or not. The process is open-ended. There is no final state. So whilst spiral dynamics covers the first 8 stages of human development, it's not finished. And arguably, we're barely out of adolescence as a species when we look at it. So we had to find ways of popularizing this back in the late 80s and 90s. It was at late 90s. And 5D was born, and it was something that we were using when I was working with Professor Graves, Professor Beck and Chris Cowan. And 5D became the way in which we quickly communicated what we're talking about here. And I want to use it with you this evening as a means of reinforcing what I've spoken about. So on the surface, 5D is on level 1, the surface level behaviors and actions are influenced by systems, structures, and artifacts. Now that's internal, inner structures and systems, as well as external. Okay? So systems, structures, and artifacts that are based on mindsets. So what the individuals think, what's important to them, what they believe, and the collective ideals and norms, what's important to the collective. This is the dynamics of culture we're talking about in that segment, the ideals and norms. And these are expressions of the themes of the deep, complex, adaptive intelligences. So each of these complex, adaptive intelligences has a theme, has a particular way of engaging a particular level of complexity of life conditions. And that's really the key quality or the key information that's communicated through spiral dynamics and the spiral dynamics interval. Because these intelligences, these coping systems, help us handle and thrive within a particular set of life conditions. And then last but not least, level 5 is the internal and external life conditions, the time and the place, the problems, the circumstances, the inner dynamics that lead to the utilization of the complex adaptive intelligences or coping systems that best fit the life conditions that an individual finds himself in. Now, that's a very simplistic way of describing it, but it's good enough for our conversation today. Now, back in 1996, when I first started to work with him, wrote this, and it's still a good phrase to use. This photograph was when they did the first training. It was the second training ever done on the planet in spiral dynamics. The first training was in Texas, in Dallas, in December 97. Came straight over to work with us in the UK. Spiral dynamics reveals the codes that shape human nature. These codes create global diversities and drive evolutionary change. These magnetic forces attract and repel individuals, form the webs that connect people within organizations, and forge the rise and fall of nations and cultures. So we're dealing with an understanding of the patterning, the complex adaptive intelligences of our species that shaped and influences all that we perceive and can perceive. So here we have this image of the perspectivals and the musical chord of coloured notes in the mind-brain system there, and the clouds and the lightning strike all communicate that there are patterns that can be coded, but there are different states that also need to be considered, and the states that change and the relationship with each of these qualities of coping systems can be understood through the work that we're dealing with. And the eye can only see what the mind can comprehend. And that's a very significant statement, because what the promotion that Anastasia and her team have put out is designed to attract those who have got the best chance of utilizing this work to best effect. And the second comment here, the mind can only comprehend what its coping systems will allow. So history is littered with stories of where, and the one that comes to mind is when the Incas invaded and when the Incas received the Spanish invasion, was it 1532? They just couldn't interpret what they were seeing. And so they interpreted what they were seeing, the knights on horseback, as a message that had picked up premonitionally in the past, and they really couldn't see the galleons on the oceans because they had no real awareness to make sense. So the work with spiral dynamics takes us into some detail. It's the only point of view that I've found that actually shows the relationships between the psychological center of gravity and the psychological change dynamics of an individual. So you can see down here that on the right-hand side, the coping system priorities, and down on the left-hand side, it's the only point of view that you'll find so far that clearly shows the relationship with the life conditions. So as you scan up and down the life conditions, one could ask, which is the life conditions that led you to be here today? And as you just look through and read these words, within you will be a story that's unfolding, which is your own story that's triggered and released by these constructs and by these words. These sentences are carefully written. But what's important is that the primary research is impeccable. So in all the work I've done since 1998 on this, there's been very little change to the beige through green understanding of the themes. Yellow is very reliable, and turquoise is just revealing itself because the life conditions are emerging where planetary viability is threatened. So one of the commitments I made back in 2000 was to continue the research, and I made the commitment to continue this work and commit my activities personally to enabling human emergence back in December 98, when the creation of the Integral Institute was in formation. So we have a meta theory. So don't look for, so from a similar point of view, I'm not looking for you to pull a book off the bookshelf called Spiral Dynamics and think you've cracked it alongside all the other books on your bookshelves. We're talking about the bookcase. We're talking about the bookcase that has the intelligence to place and petition and to understand each point of view that's out there and how it relates to a particular set of life conditions. How it can also bring in a conversation on the objects and artifacts that carry messages from the past, or increasingly our attempts to explain the future. So there are things that we are literally beyond our current linguistic capabilities that we're trying to put into words. But if we put them into words using the language and the metaphors of the present, we're actually pulling the new back into the past. So we're building a repertoire here and a capability which leads through to the development and the refinement of the key leadership skill for navigating complexity. And if you take everything I've said, basically, it's summarized by this statement by Claire Graves, which is an extract from the primary research, which was recognize, truly notice what life is, and you shall know how to behave. And this was a sentence that came out of the essential core of the holistic flow, yellow, emergent second tier thinking that was being tracked from the 1960s. So this is the means by which the leadership capabilities can differentiate between that which is complicated, mechanistic. So the clockwork universe is on the left-hand side. The universe, as we've described it so far, as complex, self-organizing, creative, full of supersized surprises, as Howard Bloom would say. That's on the right-hand side. So all of our training, all of our education, all of our control and domination of nature is basically predicated by a mechanistic worldview, using largely 17th century science that's served us well. And if I want to put a space probe on an asteroid, we use that mechanistic thinking. But equally, we're not very good at handling immune systems or complex adaptive intelligences. This herd of cows, if one cow becomes sick, the herd will adapt and self-organize. If you eat something that causes you a tummy upset, your immune system will self-organize and allow itself to adapt. So complex adaptive will self-organize, reorganize, self-heal. So when we're talking about management, we're actually geared up to focus on production mechanistically rather than management and leadership from the level of complexity. So working with that capability to read the patterns and anticipate what's next naturally. So health is a given if only we can learn to get out of the way. The navigation through these transitions that we're in as a species, which are captured in the comet's tail left behind through the research and it's happening here, is basically saying, if we can only learn to get out of the way, the future that's beckoning us is literally beyond belief. So this diagram was produced a number of years ago, and I was trying to communicate the significant leap that Claire Graves identified. Yes, we've got beige through to green on the left-hand side, the first tier stages of development, each excellent at thriving in the life conditions. But the one thing that they all share is a lack of conscious ability to manage our ecological resources. On the other side of the momentous leap, as Claire Graves would say, it's the first time we really start to be able to manage our resources on our planet in a way that does ensure viability of planet, but also viability of human species. The capacity to handle complexity in yellow is greater than the sum of all the earlier stages added together. That's where Graves got his linguistics from, the language, that it was literally moving beyond belief. So we're also moving into a new domain of more holistically, integrally informed logic. And the logic stream I'm working with today, and also in the trainings and the events in Dubai in late November, is we're really working with the question: how can we find the frameworks of models that stimulate our thinking and the approach to problem resolution of greater complexity than the kinds of problems that we've created for ourselves? That's a good question to work with, which means that if we're dealing with spiral dynamics integral, these metaframes, integral psychology, integral theory, it's from that stance we can choose the method, the practice, the approach that's likely to stimulate and maintain the flow in the culture or the flow in the psychological health of an individual, which means that they're in a healthy state. It also means we can block the closed lock gates, the log jams, and the barriers to change that can occur within an individual, within a family, within a group, within an organization, within a town, city, or village, or nation, or continent, or planet. So this is one of the few frameworks that covers that scope. The design and support capabilities are very advanced. To elaborate, to look back in from an integral perspective and understand what are the dynamics, what would fit here, what will create fitness, and then to be able to design solutions and methods which meet the group, the organization, or the customers where they are next naturally moving towards, having satiated the fulfillment of the completion of the essential growth and integration of what they've experienced previously to become the platform for what's next natural. And very simply, application is around alignment for fit and fitness. Now, it doesn't matter what the profession is, it doesn't matter what the organizational context is. It really is, when I view this, it's largely a waste of time in talking about application. Because if you are human, you are already surfing and a customer of these complex adaptive intelligences. And so it means that when I start to talk about application, inevitably it starts with me. It starts with the individual, learning to appreciate for themselves how they are responding and shaping the environment and how they've been shaped by the habitat, looking at it from a truly integral perspective. It also means that I can celebrate the fact that I had a very interesting career. I had freedom because I was fixing problems that people didn't know existed. And nobody asked me what I was doing because they didn't want to be exposed to the ignominy of not having fixed the problem in the first place. But we can recognize now that at an individual level, that is the starting point. And that's where the training stance matters and the executive programs I'm doing in Dubai is pitched. It starts with the individual. Now, when I came across this point of view in 97, I went out and I said, I'm going to apply this in as many contexts as possible. Now, when I say apply, it means I'm using the awareness of it to make sure that I'm looking back in from the perspective of universe, of that organization in that context. I won't even quote the changes in performance or the changes in the results because it's not mine to quote. It's these individuals who chose to work with the benefit of aligning their thinking with how nature functions and releasing the motivational flow. So when you understand how life works, you realize that you can't motivate people. It's impossible. What you can do is learn to release their motivational flow. And in that place is a state and quality of life and quality of existence, which isn't all roses. It's not all smiles and laughs. It can be times when there's some discernment, some questions, some doubt or despair, but it's all part of an innate process of our intelligences within us equipping us to cope. In terms of application, what you'll experience on the training in Dubai is access to some of the survey instruments that we've used successfully since 1998. And these are all linked back to the original research lineage, and there's a new instrument that I'm bringing out later this year that was originally developed by Claire Graves, but no one's ever been able to build it because it was quite complex, and it's taken me the last 5 years to develop it. But we're not small, but we're invisible. Over 100,000 surveys across 68 countries since 1998. And what we're doing is freeing people up to make sense of their own habitat, to make the changes, to choose to change in a way that they would previously never have done and have the courage to do so. I'm coming up to the end of my time. I suppose one of the things I realise is that the application of this and the hunger for it is significant. So one of the things I've been looking at ever since 1998 is, where is the new thinking anyway? If there's any validity to this point of view, there should be emergent second tier or yellow and early stage yellow certainly thinking out there. And that's what I've been tracking. And today with my wife heads up an agricultural division of what we do that focuses on the application of holistic management, which is one of the best examples of the more holistically oriented thinking and holistically oriented science emerging on our planet. It also means you can look into natural disasters and see where the new thinking is emerging naturally. It's not from the well-funded, lazy organizations. It comes from those who have to struggle, who have to learn to overcome the odds. And we're going to read this bit as closure. In Katrina's aftermath, this was Hurricane Katrina. I was living in Houston at the time. The Coast Guard rescued or evacuated more than 33,500 people, 6 times as many as it saved in all of 2004. The Coast Guard was saving lives before any other federal agency, despite the fact that almost half the local Coast Guard personnel lost their own homes in the hurricane. How did they do that? They observed and understand how nature works, and they worked with nature. And it leads to complete outperformance compared to conventional. So that was my offering for today around these 3 topics: spiral dynamics and revealing the hidden codes, key leadership skill, understand how life works and you know how to behave, and some examples of applying the framework in business, ecology, and coaching. And the bottom line there is, you can't avoid it, but you can be ignorant of it. And now's the time to wake up and utilize it. So our 2-day training is what the team are going to talk about now. But everything that we've spoken about and all the practices and all the experiences, remember that essence is in the experience. All the practices and the methods that we'll work with are designed to help you discover your own unique essence as part of a species process of humanness based on essencing that is emerging. Now I'm complete.
Thank you, Kristopher, so much.
And please, everyone. So I know that it's very charming and interesting, and Kristopher likes to make lots of hooks and makes us think a lot. And I invite you to put your questions. Yeah, some round of applause for you, Kristopher, coming from the audience. Thank you. And please, you're welcome for questions and comments. Please put them into the chat. So we will share some information about the program coming to Dubai in November, and afterwards we will have Q&A session with Kristopher that you can talk, share, probably discuss or argue about something, huh, Kristopher? Disagree even. So please welcome to drop some questions to the chat. Lisa, please take the floor.
All right. Thank you so much, Anastasia and Kristopher. Another time, I'm delighted to go through what you are sharing with us. And it's an honor to continue what you started today. And sincerely, I'm inviting all of you who are already expressing their interest in this extremely wide and really important topic and philosophy to go deeper with this, and not just with this philosophy, but to, surround yourself with the like-minded people, same values, same visionary opportunities, and we're doing it in one of the most strong places in the world, Dubai, with vibrant energy, the one that developed so quickly in such a crazy speed that even people who live here can't sometimes see it as the same city every day. So this gives us huge energy to actually make it work. And we know that a lot of people that even in Dubai can't take 3 days. So we thoughtfully arrange the program in such a way that we organize on the 24th of November, on Monday, a one-day program that will be as a deep dive in the program, but it will also be a very networking and nice event to enjoy the venue. I'm going to show you where it is, and to network and to get a lot of interesting insights from the people around you. And then the program Stance Matters, which will be like a dipper into already application of this knowledge, is the 3-day training in the same venue from the 25th to the 27th. So, oh, sorry, it's jumping too quickly. This is the slide that I am totally delighted to share, because certainly we all want to tell you what you're going to learn. And Kristopher was talking about it this whole time. But I've been working with Kristopher and Anastasia from last May. Correct me if I'm wrong, or even earlier we started. And what changed dramatically in my life is that it's one thing when you know things, and another thing is when you actually embody it and you live through. So there's no more, need for me to go and get explanation why I need to deal with the complexity, or how can I remain calm in this super stressful situation. I just don't need it. I just go with the flow. I'm super happy. I know I'm in total control. And if something is not going the way it's going, thank you, Kristopher. Seriously, I've been waiting to tell you this, and perhaps it's not the most straightforward explanation why you people need to be on this program, but it really took me time to embody this, because we've been studying the topic, we've been reading the books, we've been having webinars with Kristopher, and it really helps me in terms of the business, in terms of handling my kids, in terms of visioning my future, and envisioning like really the plans of how I want to evolve and how I want people around me to evolve. So in very simple words, this is exactly what you're going to get. You're going to get super new clarity, and you will get peace in your heart. This is my wording, Kristopher. I'm sorry, but I'm sharing my experience. I know it's not so scientific. But anyway, so there's going to be a lot of scientific things, obviously, because Kristopher has such an amazing experience in the research and in the application. So I will jump into my laptop. Doesn't want to work today. Let me check what's going on here. Yeah. No, you see, it's either too quick or it's too slow. Look at this. Yeah. So this is the side that I would like to stop on. That Dubai is interesting place because it has also within the city very different energies, and we were specifically choosing a location that is, from one hand, very vibrant, from another hand, has this calm approach when you can see the Gulf, the Persian Gulf, and it brings you this again embodiment of duality of the world, how you can be in the city with so high speed and everything, this ability to just ground yourself through the water, and it will really give you an interesting way to go through this complex knowledge, just like spiral dynamics is all about, right? Once you understand how everything is interconnected and you accept the dualities, then it just goes in. So this is the perfect place to embody the knowledge. And it's called the Address Beach Resort. Beautiful building, beautiful location, and nearby the blue waters with the, we call it Dubai Eye, and this will be part of our program as well, of the 3-day course. So you can have a look at the website. We will definitely send you a follow-up in the emails as well. And I will come back quickly to the VIP day, we call it. It's a 1-day. Why we call it VIP? Because we combined not just the nice venue with the good food and good quality of knowledge, but also the part which will be the networking. There will be exclusive book signing ceremony. There will be a gala dinner followed after, and there will be professional photo sessions. So it's not going to be just the day to learn something. It's going to be the day to share, to grow together, and to actually appreciate the beauty of life that we all have. And the program, the 3-day program, is going to be in the same place. It's going to be 3 days. So the coffee breaks and lunch, everything is included. And it's going to be more a program where you will not just learn about the philosophy and dive deep into it, but you will actually learn the bigger scale of it and how to implement it and how to use it in your daily life. This is exactly what we as people who are working with this program is now experiencing, and you will be able to do it only in 3 days, which is a huge gift, trust me. The group sizes are limited, so it's going to be a very filtered people in the program who understand the value of it, because there is no point to explain the value of it if people don't understand. You know, it's like creating something for those who don't need it. No, we're not doing it. So we're only waiting for those of you who share our passion about making this world different and about learning how to deal with your own complexities, how to deal with the world's complexities. And basically, the 3 days training will be from 10 a.m. to 6:45 each day. And those people who took time today to participate in the webinar and get to know Kristopher closer, we really appreciate your time. And we would like to say that, first of all, we're going to have a recording of the session, which will be forwarded to you in the email afterwards with the presentation. And most importantly, since we all live in the monetary world, you know, we still need some nice gift in terms of this monetary values as well. So we're providing you $500 discount for 3 days transformative training, Stance Matters experience. The next slide. Look what's going on. Kristopher, I would like the explanation of what's going on. All right. Oh, look, I didn't even touch it. This is a mystery. Wow. Okay. Apologies. Look, it lives his own life, but I need to show you this slide because this is a very important one. So let's try again. Yeah, no. So the packages, basically, what we thought about as well is that, you know, because we're doing the program as in 1 day and then the 3 days, there is different options on how you can take the program. So the first option is just to take a 1-day VIP day, which is the actual 1-day separate offer, and it's $1,800. And then the package we call the architect. Now I hope you see the slides correctly. So it's including the pre-training, the 3-day training, and that's the one which is called Distance Matters as it is. This one is 3,300, and this is the one that you can get the discount from. If you choose to go with the package, the Legend, you'll still have the opportunity to use this discount of $500. And also, this package includes already the VIP day and the 3 days. And lastly, the package, the master, and we have a couple of people signed up for this amazing project. I'm saying it's a project because people are committing full 8 days of learning with us, and I take my head off because it's amazing. People will go first to the Art and Science Module 1 to get their knowledge in coaching and then diversify themselves through actually gaining more knowledge on the spiral dynamics. And this gives them really different way to start their career. So I hope this webinar resonates with you since you spent time with us. We stay in touch. We will proceed with the questions to Kristopher, but what I'm saying in terms of Ericsson and specifically myself, I will be very happy to assist you in terms of finding out logistics or something if you're not from Dubai. Feel free, text me. I'm still that Elizabeth annoying in all of the chats, and I will remain there. So let me know if there's anything I can help you with. And I really look forward to meeting you all at one of the events or all of the events that we're arranging in Dubai at the end of this November.
Thank you, Lisa. And probably the last thing to mention that we are giving CC hours for the coaches, for those who are already has ACC or PCC credentials. So it's going to be 29 hours basic theories or NZ coaching hours. So, and of course, official certificate. So the Stance Matters is accredited by ICF. So this is, I think, very important to mention for the coaches. And we've got a question from Elsie. Elsie, are you here? Just saw you, yeah? Please go ahead.
Firstly, thank you very much, Kristopher, for all that you've done. I've followed your work for quite some time. It's not the first time I've listened to your presentation, so thank you. I'm very interested in it because I work a lot with cross-cultural teams. And my thing is collaborating across cultures and how can we all work to thrive together. So there's a lot here that is fascinating to me. And we talk about patterns, right? And so I'm really curious in the work you've done, if you've noticed patterns as to what countries are more towards the turquoise and yellows and where certain countries are perhaps stuck in, orange and reds. Because I think there is quite a lot of overlap between cultural influences as well as industrial influences, as well as what you're working on. So I was just curious as to where you are in terms of what you've noticed in patterns. And the bigger question is how can you best bridge these gaps, right? First is recognizing, secondly is just how do we bridge those gaps? That's a big question. Sorry.
That's a big question, Elsie.
Yeah, it is. Sorry, I just thought of it. I was just like, these are things I'm struggling with. So as you're the expert, I thought.
Well, you asked that question just as I'm in Minneapolis, and obviously it's a very strong liberal setting, and obviously I arrive here and I'm bombarded with lots of conversations around the current leadership. What I'm noticing, and this is my generalist way of answering your question because that's all I can really do. But I would like to delve into it in much more detail with people like yourself, is that really we're seeing what I call first order change. We're seeing change and innovation within the paradigm that created the problem in the first place. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't matter where we talk about introduction of new technology, whatever, it's the thinking behind it all is still very generalized into the tail end of the last paradigm. But what's increasingly interesting is the surprises of what's emerging, certainly in the USA, the UK, Australia. What emerges in the thinking of the general population, and this polarity really between Conservatives and Democrats and that dynamic. But underlying it all, we're seeing people confused. They don't know quite what it means to carry their flag. And obviously, my wife's enjoying this trip much more than she would normally, because when I've met her 12 years ago, with her red Volkswagen Beetle and Obama bumper stickers on the car. And she voted for President Trump on the last round. But she can explain why to her friends and her colleagues in a way that really stops them in their tracks. So what I'm seeing the world over, it doesn't matter where it is, health is becoming part of the dominant agenda. So quality of life is popping through. When you're dealing multinationally, you're dealing with countries that have their own unique center of gravity of coping systems or consciousness. And a maxim that Claire Graves had comes to mind is that, damn it, everyone has a right to be who he or she is. Okay? So it's accepting that different countries are in different stages of development, and recognizing that's where they're at. But from a predictive point of view, you can predict and see what's next naturally. So I know there's people on the call here from South Africa. It doesn't matter where it's South Africa, Dubai. Where do you live, Elsie?
I actually live in France, but I'm American. So
Okay.
I've been around the world, really.
Yeah, and so you can see the unintended consequences of revolutionary change. If you push too hard and chop off the heads and burn the books, you start to realize that you can have cultures that have gaps in their psychological or cultural resilience. Okay, so it's a very interesting time, and all bets are off. But what is surprising me is the entrenchment as the stuckness in exiting green becomes the biggest hurdle for our species to navigate through of any stage of development so far. So if you look at the Scandinavian countries, look at Japan, look at Switzerland, they're all countries that have been starting to move in that domain, that orange-green transition over many decades. But the wild card I'm tracking is Iceland at the moment, because with the youth, the changing behaviours in the youth are very interesting. I've not had a chance to look at it yet, but it'll be on the edges, Elsie, where the change comes. But if you work with multinationals, trust that there's an underlying intelligence in nature, and fundamentally, your job, my job, is to help people to learn to get out of the way and release that innate natural flow that can self-organize. So the greatest barrier to change is not just the death throes of early ways of thinking, it's also social systems, policies, and so on that reinforce the past with a lack of awareness, or performance and reward systems for executives that keep us locked into a past and puts these individuals through a living hell, especially if part of their soul is evolving through to a new level, and very often they have to park their aspirations and wait until they're retired to follow what their soul song is giving them. So, and I was listening to Tracy just before we started this call. I'm listening, and the lady, who was it who just spoke? Her soul was singing. I'm so happy, because that when an individual is in full flight, they're able to handle the changes. But if you can start to predict and let's stay focused on the future, that dip is telling me something, that there's a gap somewhere in my repertoire. How do I massage that to allow what's next naturally to emerge? And I've seen it so many times, Elsie. I've worked a lot with multinational companies, and if they can only learn to get out of the way, they can watch things happen at a pace that completely outcompetes the present paradigm. But there also is a problem, and that's one of the problems I ran into in the water industry in 98, 99, is that we could actually support culture change much faster than the leadership could cope with.
Thank you. No, thank you very much. I think it's optimism. I mean, I don't think anyone ever realized that we can go back as much, and we're seeing it, and it's just frustrating. That's all.
Well, think of it. The way I think of it is, and describe it's a knee bend. Okay, So it might look as though things are going backwards, but basically it's individuals and the collective searching in their repertoire. Have we got anything in our basement that we can use to get through this? And if they can't, they can go quite a long way into a deep hole. And that's our job. That's the real skill, is to work with individuals who are in a really stuck state. But the beauty of spiral dynamics and the work of Graves is, for the first time, you've got a linguistic structure and a metaphor to use to guide you until you no longer need it. So the nuance, the finesse, and the fulfillment comes when you no longer need the textbooks, because you yourself becomes a reliable transducer or instrument in responding to the way life's working. And it keeps you busy for the first few years focusing on yourself. But suddenly you realize, in the coaching work that I do, when the coaches realize that they are the life conditions for another human being, and who they are is way more important than what they do, because that is the ultimate shaping dynamic of the future of the person they're coaching or mentoring, then that presses the pause button.
Thank you.
So a lovely big question, Elsie. Keep living it.
Well, thank you for answering it.
Thank you. Okay, so thank you so much for everyone. This is time to wrap up. Kristopher, we're looking forward to host you here in Dubai very soon. Thank you everyone for your active participation. Lisa, thank you so much for the program update and overview, and appreciate your active participation in all events of Ericsson UAE. So looking forward to see you and for the next event. Until next, thank you so much. Have a nice evening, everyone.
Yeah.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.